Okay, Noah,
Uh,
it's exciting to be here with you and just have a conversation about your story, the things you've learned in building a successful business. One thing I've noticed about you and that I appreciate about you is that you're an action taker and you're not afraid of jumping in, doing things, testing things. That's kind of the impression I've gotten from conversations we've had. So let's just start with your story. How did you get to build your business? How did it start?
yeah, it's good to be with you and thank you for taking the time. Um, I guess it all started the day I was born, but I always wanted to be an inventor or an entrepreneur. And I got into property management after high school because I simply didn't want to go to college. So I started leasing apartments. I got my real estate license, and then just by happenstance, I met my now business partner and my good friend Sean, who was interested in Airbnb and short-term rentals. So we started a little company together where we were doing rental arbitrage and ultimately, property management for other owners. We started acquiring real estate and buying portfolios and just growing the short-term rental business until, later on I got my real estate broker's license in California and we turned into a full service brokerage. And so that was sort of the evolution of our little real estate journey.
That's great. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're probably one of the youngest brokers. I know you've accomplished a lot pretty quickly.
We're doing okay. And that's true. At one point, I think I was the youngest real estate broker in the state. And I was all happy about that. But really, we didn't build anything until a couple of years later when we had a great team around us of sales agents and admin. So now we're really starting to cook. Very happy about that.
That's great. Well, it's always a journey, right? Going from zero to one takes time, and what people don't realize, or maybe we know it but we forget, is that 0 to 1 is 10 times to 100 times harder than going from 1 to 10. So, thinking of your journey, those early days, what were some creative things you've done? What were some tasks that have really led to good results in your business? Can you think back to what you've learned and what actually worked for you in building the business, generating income?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All about momentum, like you said. So it starts with one just relationship, one conversation with an owner or somebody else who's involved. And you find a way where you can carve out value, carve out a niche where you can add something to the conversation. And then one relationship turns into a referral, turns into maybe an acquisition. And so I think where we had a lot of success was just creative problem solving on the tail end of COVID when a lot of operators were struggling to get their business back up and running. Um, and so we got involved also with a lot of arbitrageurs who had just kind of lost their shirts and they had all this overhead. So we're acquiring portfolios and again, just carving out a niche in our space, which happens to be Airbnb. It could be any industry. We saw, you know, changing tides and this, geopolitical disaster also just opens up a lot of opportunity if you can solve problems.
Yeah, that's a good insight. I mean, that's what good business is, right? Find a problem, solve it, and you'll be doing quite well for a while. If you think of your approach, right, that niche that you have developed with your business partner, what would you say are a handful of things that make you stand out? What were the things that you're doing to really allow you to have success? Because I know other people who have Airbnbs and they're not very successful or they're doing decently well, but you guys are really good at it.
We've done our homework in terms of the software and hardware stacks and automations. And so
Right.
what we're trying to do is offer a comprehensive solution for owners where we remove all the guesswork. And so your time managing vacation rentals is really where you lose out because it's very management intensive. And so we take that component off their plate. And then at the same time, we're increasing profitability by introducing them to the tax benefits of vacation rentals. So not only are we just, hiring a cleaning company for our owners, but we're really giving them a comprehensive solution and helping them extract maximum value from this investment strategy. So
And,
when you have any business, you
yeah.
have all these little opportunities to expand and grow and take full control of the process.
Yeah, and that's gold in any industry, any business. There are always ways to layer things and really stand out and be able to accomplish a lot more than the competition. That's awesome. Do you want to share, a couple of ways in which vacation rental owners can benefit? Like, what are some of the tax advantages? You know, keeping in mind that we're not tax professionals, we're just talking about the things we've discovered as we've been doing business. But what would you say are maybe one or two advantages that you mentioned in your conversation with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not an investment advisor. So I'd recommend people, we would consult all of those professionals. But bonus depreciation was brought back into the fold with the new tax legislation, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. And so vacation rentals are one of the few ways that your average, consumer, your average retail buyer can take full advantage of bonus depreciation. And what that essentially means is if you're like a W-2 worker, you're not a full-time entrepreneur, a full-time real estate investor. But if you follow certain IRS guidelines, if you operate your vacation rental, specifically a vacation rental, then we can make the IRS look at it as business property and business income as opposed to passive income. So active income as opposed to passive income. And then once we identify those key components with a cost segregation study, we break down the property to its roots. We share that with our CPA, and then we can take a massive deduction against our regular income. So it allows retail buyers to be taxed more like an entrepreneur instead of being taxed like a W-2 employee.
Yeah, and that's huge for high earners, professionals who make a lot of money on a W-2. That's what you just said is so valuable, could save them thousands and thousands
Tens
of
of
dollars.
thousands. Our
Yeah,
clients are saving
yeah,
50, 70, $100,000 in 1 year. And if you simply rinse and repeat this annually with the new tax
exactly.
bill, removing the sunset provision. So this is where we're creating the most value right now. This is like most of my sales as a broker and most of the activity for our
Yeah.
management group. It's our clients, from the Bay Area or just high income W-2 workers, and we're saving them. Forget about the cash flow from vacation rental. I mean, we don't even
Hmm.
talk about that anymore. The tax benefit is really the massive value creation.
Yeah, and that's also one of the
So I appreciate you giving me
strategies.
the
Yeah.
appreciate you giving me a format to talk about it because this is all I've been talking about lately. It's very exciting.
Yeah, I it's something similar to what we're looking to do with buying businesses, where if you have the assets, it's a little bit different than real estate, but you still get the depreciation, and
Yes.
you right instead of paying the government X amount of dollars, you get to save that money and you put it into another deal, so you can, like you said, rinse and repeat, and that's how you build wealth. This is pretty cool. I get excited about it. I know not everybody does, but this is like super valuable information. If you were to think of, your journey over the last 5 to 10 years, what would you say was a small experiment that led to a huge result that was surprising to you? As you were trying things, as you were doing things, what would you say was maybe a smaller experiment, something you thought, I'm going to try this. I don't know if it's going to work, and it actually led to some really big results for you.
I think that's most of what we've done. Like most of the money I've made has all just been um, like I met this random guy and he's talking about Airbnb. So I thought, okay, let's do. I think we each put in $10,000 to the business and it ballooned into a multi-million dollar revenue company. That was an experiment, absolutely. And every new program or division that we created, where we shifted, we were trying arbitrage. Let's try that out. Or let's try property management. And now let's try buying a property. And we bought a property. We did a little value add, like a little flip, and then we sold it to another operator and then managed it for him on a management contract. These were all experiments. We were just learning as we go. And ultimately, when we started focusing more on selling real estate, automating, delegating the management as much as possible, and focusing more on the brokerage side, that also was something that I hadn't. I got my broker's license so that we could expand our property management service offerings. I didn't think about hiring agents and selling real estate, and now we're probably doing more revenue on that side than the management. That was an experiment as well. And I think just being an entrepreneur, the nature is like you're almost like a
Yeah.
chemist. You're trying new things all the time.
Yeah, how do you decide if an action, a task, a project, it might be a good experiment to run? You know, I agree with you. The only way to almost guarantee success, because we can't say to guarantee success in life, but to almost guarantee 99.9% is to do enough experiments and not give up and pivot and adjust. But how do you kind of decide? Is it intuition? Is it data? Is it past experience or talking to experts? What's your process that maybe you go through? And of course, if it's a smaller experiment, you might have a shorter process. If it's a longer experiment, it could be a longer process. But I noticed all entrepreneurs have these almost like innate ways they look at things in intuitive ways. So it'd be interesting to hear how you process it.
Yeah, I think intuition is a big part of it because I like to think that the decisions I make are based on gut instinct, but really gut instinct is just a collection of all of your experience and memories and data collection. So with any problem or, when you were thinking about creating a new division, you're thinking about trying something new, you think about it like a problem that needs to be solved. And always the framework is the same. It's you gather information and then you put it into a plan of action and then you execute it aggressively. So when we think about like we created Juno, we created a subsidiary loan company so that we could offer loans and refinances in-house. Not a hard, not a hard decision because the risk reward, the risk is very little and we already have an audience who needs loans. So I think it's just all about building blocks. I'm going back to the concept of momentum. And once you've carved out your space, you can start to expand outward. And it should happen pretty naturally and progressively.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Um, if as we're talking, you're sharing the progression, and it's easy to overlook the challenges. And people, when they start, they don't realize, um, some of the journeys we go through. There's this graph, I call it the Valley of Despair graph, where you start something, it sounds really interesting. You're like, I think this is gonna work. But you work on it for a while and it ends up being a lot harder than you realize. More challenges come your way than you realized. And then it gets to a point where you almost feel like giving up because there are plenty of challenges and you have other things going on. But if you push through on the other side, you actually get to benefit and have these little breakthroughs that add up and give you the momentum you need. Um, what I've noticed with a lot of people who start businesses or side hustles is that they give up at that, valley of despair point. So it sounds great. They hit some walls and then it feels really hard and they jump ship as if, the next opportunity won't require the same journey. So when you think of your journey, right, you've accomplished a lot, but I'm sure you had some challenging seasons, those seasons where you felt like giving up. Can you share maybe a couple of those examples and what helped you get through it? Because we all have ups and downs, it helps to be reminded that this entrepreneurial journey is not extremely easy. It has its challenges here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're supposed to be tested. It's not supposed to be easy. And I think it just comes down like things are going to get hard, and then you really get to see what kind of entrepreneur you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
because ultimately everybody has their price. Like, how bad do you want it? How hungry are you really? And if you're not, I think, desperate early on, then probably it's not going to come to anything.
Yeah,
I'm a big
it's
believer in
true.
just digging yourself a deep hole, and then you have no choice but to find your way out. And so, in my darkest season, when I was living in New York, I was living in Brooklyn and smoking too much probably, and just frantically calling cleaners because our Scottsdale portfolio was falling apart, early on and during the peak season. Those challenges. Like I had no choice. I couldn't just let it deter me. I didn't really have a choice. I had to solve that problem because I had obligations at that point. to my overhead and to my company and to my business partner, Sean, and his family and my obligations. So, um, and so we made it out to the other side.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it
yeah.
was
So,
worth it too. So
okay.
now every challenge feels a little bit easier after you conquer something. Because
Hmm.
I think back to every other time it got hard and I somehow I made it this far. I certainly won't be stopped now.
Yeah, it's
Because you
kind
build
of
a
like,
certain
yeah.
callousness.
Yeah, well, I like to say you built muscle, almost emotional and, you know, the same way you think of building muscle is physically. And you go through that process and it can be painful, but then you have more capacity and more capacity, you can take on more. And then thinking back of how you were able to carry this much at one point gives you the motivation and encouragement to keep going. But it sounds like you were motivated by the people around you. You did not want to give up on the responsibilities you've had, and you wanted to make sure you take care of the people around you. That it sounded to me that was a big motivator for you.
Absolutely. That's my primary motivation always. Yeah. If I didn't have Sean around, I probably would have quit by now because I wouldn't really like have a reason to stay. I would love to just go piss off and retire early in Europe right now, but not really an option.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's
And
good.
again, that's a position that I've imposed on myself essentially, but that
Right.
holds me accountable. I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, have you heard of the five whys or seven whys exercise where
Sure.
you identify what really motivates you or why you're doing something, and then you come up with an answer, but then you ask why that answer, then you ask the why question like 5 to 7 times, and you get to the heart of it. It sounds like you've kind of figured it out, but a lot of entrepreneurs um, don't figure that out, and then it's a lot harder to push forward. Because I've experienced some dark seasons where we lost a lot, and I had no idea how I'm gonna get through it. And it was thinking back to why I'm doing it. Like you said, you impose it, you put it on yourself. You choose to do this for this reason, and it was so much easier to do it when I was clear on why I was doing it. I'm hoping that this conversation encourages, other business owners, entrepreneurs, because it can become a pretty lonely journey if you are by yourself. Like you have a partner, I have partnerships. I have partners in every business, and I love partnerships. But how did you find your partner? I've had bad examples, bad stories. I heard bad stories of partnerships. I have lost a lot of money because of bad partners. How do you identify a good partner, or how did you do it in your case? What would be some insights to share with others?
I'm just not the authority on that topic. I think I got lucky. Yeah. Sean walked into my office one day, my leasing office, and he had a twinkle in his eye. I could tell that he had the same motivation as I did. And it just so happened that we have complementary skill sets, very different, two very
Mhm.
different people and different skills, but we come together nicely. The trust between us has been built over time, and that might not have happened if I hadn't been so
Mhm.
lucky. So, but my only advice when looking for a partner is somebody who has the same level of motivation, and there's a clear delineation of labor, so that when you guys are going into it, you know what each party is bringing to the table, and you clearly spell out your obligations in a written agreement. Because we didn't do this early on, we just happened to fall into place, but I don't expect to get so lucky in the future.
Yeah, it's true, and I appreciate that you are being really honest about it. And sometimes, this journey is a result of luck. You go on this path, or you meet this person, and it happens to work great. Uh, but at the same time, um, you made a wise decision, right? You identify someone who has, well, you said yes to someone who has complementary skills. I have seen people with almost similar skill sets partner, and it didn't really go well. Um, so yes, it was a little bit of luck, but you also were wise to say yes to a person who had complementary skills. In working with people, did you have to fire people? Did you get to hire really great people? What have you learned in
Yeah.
working with people to make your business more successful?
Yeah, always, always, always your team is the key to your success. So like In our case, we took a bunch of employees from Airbnb. We're very excited about that. So some of our core team members actually were working on the other side and bring a lot of experience to the table. Um, and you have to be really clear with your staff. I mean, this is just basic. Like if you've never hired people before, you need to know you have to give people very clear metrics. How do they know that they're doing a good job? Or how do they know that they're doing a bad job? So we might call that KPIs or measuring their output, but give them a very clear task with a goal in mind. And if you don't do that, then it's, everybody kind of gets lost and you're not always clear what the job description entails. And if someone's not carrying their weight, they're going to drag down the people around them. So yeah, I've certainly fired people before and it's never fun.
Yeah, I know. I've done it plenty of times in the last few years. Um, when you look at the KPIs, the metrics that you give people, how do you come up with those KPIs? How you think about those types of metrics?
Well, they just have to be results based. So in our case, the results are how happy are my guests? How clean is the apartment? How much money are my owners making? How many tickets are closed out, which result in those ends. So you kind of work your way backwards from what you want your business to produce.
Well, that requires you to be quite reflective and be very clear on what you want. I talked to a lot of small business owners who just started a business. They were great technicians, but maybe not great at the business side. And they started to grow, and they didn't really take the time to be reflective, identify what type of business do I want to build. It just happened that they were making money, had bills to pay, maybe families to support, and didn't really take a lot of time to be reflective. So thinking of, the importance of reflection, if you were to go back to your younger self, maybe 5 years ago, and give yourself some advice, what
I'm
would
getting so
you,
old and wise now.
what would you advise yourself?
Just enjoy the process. Yeah, don't get so frustrated. Yeah, it was really stressful early on when I was like 20, 21. I would get really stressed out once the business started to grow. And it took a little bit of time again to develop that muscle memory of the calluses, just to shake it off at the end of each day. So
Good.
said slow down a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. It feels like if we don't get things done, though, in the next 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, things might fall apart. But often they don't. You survived it.
Yeah,
One of the biggest blessings and gifts I received was when I lost almost everything, because I realized it's not that big of a deal. You just rebuild it. So if you were to re have to rebuild from scratch, tomorrow, what would you do first? Knowing what you know now, of course, it's having the skills you have now. Uh,
a very rich man told me that he told me that you're not really a business person until you've built it up and then lost everything and then built it again. So I
well,
don't know,
I've
maybe
done
that
it.
time in
Okay.
my life will come. Yeah.
Well, it sounded like you had a season where it was pretty rough. So you're, struggling, going through some of those same emotional struggles that someone who loses almost everything experiences.
Sure, and we've certainly lost money. Yeah, and we almost went bankrupt with COVID. I mean, that happened right. We start a hospitality business, and then there's a global pandemic,
Yeah,
like immediately after. So we
yeah.
poured a bunch of money into this investment, and then it essentially falls apart.
Yeah, I had a mentor who invests in hundreds of businesses every year. And he said, I will not invest in a person who has not almost lost everything at least once, because he says, I don't trust that he can get through a really, really hard season. But if you were, close to bankruptcy, you lost almost everything, and you still push through, it doesn't matter if you lost it, you push through, you got on the other side. He would say, I know you can figure things out, and that's all that matters. Because skills, we can pick up skills. It has not that much to do with skills. It has more to do with the mental strength, or the willingness to keep trying, to keep experimenting. So it was a cool encouragement to me after, I almost lost everything. I was like, okay, I'm on the right path. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm on the right path. Um, let's see. If you think about this question, what comes to mind? What actually separates the businesses that make it from the ones that don't? In your experience, you interact with a lot of people who are trying to build businesses, invest in real estate. What, separates those who make it from those that don't?
I've seen a lot of like my friends and people in my circles fail at businesses, and the one common denominator for me seems to be that like they have a lot of ideas and kind of vague concepts about how they want their business to feel for them, and it's almost like very insular when they talk about it. They're not really, you can tell they're not thinking from a place of how it's going to impact others. They're thinking about how they want it to vibe. And it just feels like there's not a lot of research into the fundamental value creation of the business. You always get what you give. And if you create, a business is like this
Mhm.
entity that is supposed to create something. If you're just focused on satiating your own ideas and you're less focused on the user, the end user and the impact, then you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, you
So that's
keep
really
saying that
important to me.
you don't know if you're qualified to answer, but your answers are really good. So, thank you for at least, trying to answer the questions. Um, Given what you just said, who are the people that you can actually help the most? What would be those people that your business, given all the things you guys are doing right now, would benefit the most from working with you guys?
What we're doing right now, it would be high income W-2 workers who want to save money on taxes. So that's the bulk of the work that we're doing right now.
Okay, that's great. And is there a specific type of person you enjoy working with? Because you have a bunch of different types of high earners, and I've had to fire clients many times because I think protecting my mental health is super important. If I'm not in the right space mentally, my team suffers. So for that reason, I fire clients every now and then. So when you think of clients, who are the actual clients that you really love working with? What are the
I,
traits that come to mind?
I actually really love the clients who are curious and want to learn the business. Yeah, who might be a little bit more hands-on. It's counterintuitive. I think
Hmm.
some of my agents might not prefer that kind of client, but I like it. I get some kind of satisfaction more so than like the commission check when we can help somebody progress in their real estate journey. If that's what we're here, if that's what we exist to do, then that's what we should be doing. And so not only just doing everything for them, but holding their hand a little bit and helping them break down the concepts in a way that's digestible for somebody who's not a full-time real estate investor, so that they can go and rinse and repeat and do it. And it's good for me too. And they're going to want to come back. They're
Hmm.
going to want to do more of it if they understand it better.
Yeah, exactly. People don't realize that most of our profit comes from a small percentage of clients. If you've heard of the 80/20 rule, 20% of your customers give you 80% of the profits. But then if you take the 20% and you apply the 80/20 to that again, it's what 4% of your customers generate 64 of your profit, 64% of your profit. Then you do apply the 80/20 one more time, is 1% of your clients, customers generate, what is it, 80% of 64. I don't remember what the number is, but it's a big number. Sometimes I forget.
46.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I forget sometimes, and I focus so much on the small clients that don't even care to work with us, rather than nurturing those relationships with, in your case, those who are curious. What happens is they're going to come back and do more and more deals with you because now they understand it. So they will be more successful and they will make more profit. So then you make more profit. It's such a beautiful thing when we start to think of these real little principles that we can apply to make our business life easier.
Yeah,
Yeah, pretty cool
absolutely.
stuff.
That's why it's really important as a business owner just to network and not always like I'll show up to Metro List events or I'll show up to Association of Realtors events to get real estate insight. but it's also helpful joining a network like yours and just talking to business owners so that I can always fine tune my framework, like just my general
Hmm.
problem solving framework, because
Yeah.
everything that you do is coming in through that lens.
Yeah, that's a great reminder for everyone who's listening. If someone wants to get in touch with you, what's the easiest way to get connected? And we can also add all that information online where we're posting the summary and insights from this conversation. But if someone was looking to really talk to you, maybe work with you, what's the best way to contact you?
I'm super easy to find. They can call me or email me at noah@hardinpm.com or add me on Facebook or
Okay.
whatever.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you when we meet at different events. And I'm excited to see how you guys continue to grow the company. You've done some pretty cool things. And I know every time I talk to you, you have these other ideas. I'm like, oh, we can take this and go in this direction. And even after, I think the second conversation we had together, you already had an idea of doing a business brokerage. Well, let's combine skill sets and experiences. And it might happen, it might not. We'll see. But I love that you're always looking to implement, take action. So thank you for your time. Is there a question maybe I should have asked that I didn't ask, given your background and what you're doing, that would have
No,
been
I think you did perfect. I think your interview
okay?
was perfect. I really appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you
Noah.
so much.
Thank you.